Every single thing on the planet we are measuring with a broken measuring stick. The entire global economy hinges on the decisions of this one man who is not elected by the people. When you read the history of the creation of the Federal Reserve, it'll just make your head explode. There is just so much in the fiat monetary system that there is definitely some going on with the Bitcoin price. I don't want it going to BlackRock. I don't want it going to these centralized. I don't want it going to Michael Saylor. I think there are going to be massive implosions. I don't think the government really recognizes what they're up against when it comes to Bitcoiners because we are not easily distracted. We will hone in on something that really matters and we won't rest until it's resolved.
Today, I'm excited to welcome Erin back to the podcast. Erin is an educator, a health maximalist, a death doula, and was born to be a Bitcoiner. Erin's first episode has over 34,000 views and is my most watched interview on the YouTube channel. Good to see you again, Erin.
It's great to be back, Paula. Thanks for inviting me on again. It seems like we just chatted, and it also feels like it's been a really long time.
So let's start there. What's been happening in your life since we last spoke?
Kind of in that same trajectory. It feels like nothing has happened, and then it feels like a lot has happened at the same time. So I guess we last talked in August of 2025. So not a lot, really, personally. I finished working for the summer. I did a couple of Bitcoin events in my community. I hosted an evening for women, and I had 12 women come, which was really, really cool. And I live in a town of 4,000 people, so 12 women was quite a nice surprise. So that was great, and lots of really good feedback as well. So I live in my camper van. I think I mentioned that on the first episode. So I live in Canada, so spending winters in Canada is not really conducive to the camper van lifestyle. So I'm currently in Mexico for a undetermined amount of time. I've been here for a couple weeks now, so I'm just kind of riding out the bad weather in Canada. But yeah, not a whole lot. I mean, just I think with the coming of the new year, it really, I mean, whether you agree that that's the actual start to the actual new year or not, I think it does make you a little more cognizant of the passage of time. And I'm not huge on New Year's resolutions, but I did give some thought to, what do I want to focus on for 2026? What do I want to offer to the community, to the world at large? And then what do I personally want to do, both in Bitcoin and outside of Bitcoin? So I've just been working on, X is such a great place to connect with Bitcoiners, and that's where my people are, and that's where I go to remind myself that I'm not alone and I'm not crazy. But Instagram is actually where I find a lot of engagement, like a lot of curiosity from people that maybe aren't as aware of the problem as Bitcoiners are. So, and also taking into account the attention span of the majority of people, myself included. Typically, when I create stuff for Instagram, I go off on a huge tangent and I end up with like a 10-minute long video. And I know people have checked out way before that they ever get to the end. So I've decided to post 1 minute every single day for the entire year, just covering the entire gamut of money, the history of banking, what the problem is, how Bitcoin fixes the problem. I mean, I don't exactly know where it's all going to end up, but it's those 1 minute little bites of information. And I feel like even if people aren't watching every single day, you could still catch a 1 minute clip this week, another 1 minute clip the following week, and at least gain some sort of knowledge about what's actually happening in the world. So that's kind of where my focus is at the moment.
That's really cool. Somebody just asked me this week where I felt there was a gap in the Bitcoin community, and I said the short form. I'm not on TikTok, so I don't see that. I'm sure there are videos on TikTok, and I don't see much Bitcoin information on Instagram. So it's great to know you're there.
Yeah, I woke up in the middle of the night last night, like 3:30 a.m., and I thought, should I get a TikTok account? And I've been really resistant to it because the last thing I need is another social media platform in my life, like something else to take my attention. But I was really shocked at how many people my age, like I'm in my mid 40s, and how many people my age are on TikTok scrolling. And so I did give it some thought, and I came to the conclusion that no, I'm not going to, but we'll see. We'll see, because I know that's where most people go to just scroll and distract themselves. So
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting. Before we get into 2026, 2025 was a disappointing year for some Bitcoiners who measure Bitcoin's price in fiat money. What are your thoughts on that?
for sure. Yeah, I mean, gosh, going into the year, there were so many predictions about what the Bitcoin price was going to be. And with the ETF inflows and all the money that was coming into Bitcoin. And it was my 4th year being in. So the general advice is to hold for 4 to 5 years, and magically you'll be super rich. So yeah, it was exciting. I mean, I think once we hit that all-time high, we all kind of expected that it would just keep going and going and going. And then it didn't. And it actually, I remembered my first year. So I got in September of 2021, and there was the exact same narrative happening at that time. People were telling me, you got to get it now. You got to get as much as you can because it's going to go to 100K by the end of the year. And that was in 2021. And we didn't actually get to 100K until last year. And then that same narrative popped up again, right? Like we're going to 400, 500,000. Some people were even saying 1 million. So, if nothing else, Bitcoin teaches you patience. For people that really understand it, you just get to practice more patience. And, the longer that you have to mentally and emotionally kind of work yourself through this high time preference, right? Like this, I want it now kind of feeling, the more you get to work on that, I think ultimately in the long run, it's just going to be so beneficial in all areas of your life. So I do trust that everything happens in perfect time, and that Bitcoin was and is divinely inspired. So I think there is a plan if you want to look at it from that standpoint. So, you just got to trust the plan. And I just finished listening to Simon Dixon's podcasts, the two he was on in the past week. And I'm also reading a book currently called The Lords of Finance. I don't know if you've heard of it, but there is just so much, if I can swear, like there is just so much fuckery in the fiat monetary system that there is definitely some fuckery going on with the Bitcoin price. But the beauty of Bitcoin is that the fundamentals never change and the protocol never changes. So we just have to be patient. People need to learn the lesson that the fiat rules of Wall Street do not apply to Bitcoin. As much as they may try, as much as it may be being manipulated currently, that can't go on forever. So again, like if you're panicked, if you're upset, if you're depressed, if you're wondering what's going on, my advice would be just read another book about Bitcoin or read another book about the Federal Reserve or listen to another podcast. Like it probably means that your conviction's not deep enough. So yeah, if you ever stressed about it, just take in some more information or just get off of social media.
Yeah, true. And I've heard you say this, one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. And when we're measuring in US dollars or Canadian dollars, we have no denominator, right? Because they keep printing more. So measuring in US dollars or any fiat currency, is not the best way to measure, but it's natural, it's human to measure in US dollars because that's what we know. But the more we price in Bitcoin, the easier it gets to leave that behind a little.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, you hear that one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin basically from the moment that you step into the Bitcoin arena. But I didn't really understand what that meant until this past year. I think it was Terrence from Bitcoin Today. He did one of his floating wheelie videos, and he was talking about this idea of the measuring stick. And every single thing on the planet we are measuring with a broken measuring stick. And not only is it broken, but it changes all of the time. And it's just crazy when you zoom out and you think every single thing that we value on the planet, the value of all of those things is determined by one guy 8 times a year. It's absolutely mental. It's just so ludicrous and so crazy.
Tell us what you mean by that. One guy 8 times a year.
Yeah, so the Federal Reserve of the United States of America, because the US dollar is the world reserve currency, every policy change that happens at the Fed affects the entire global economy. So 8 times a year, Jerome Powell steps up to the microphone and he lets people know we're either going to be printing more money, which they've rephrased as quantitative easing, or we're going to print less money. So quantitative tightening, QT or QE. So just those words coming out of his mouth lets you know quantitative easing means more money is going to be printed, meaning the value of your dollar is going to go down, meaning more of those dollars are going to be flowing into the stock market, bonds, treasuries, commodities, Bitcoin, gold, those kinds of things in order to attempt to retain some of the value that you've worked for. And the entire global economy hinges on the decisions of this one man who is not elected by the people. It's actually not a federal agency at all. It's private. And again, when you read the history of the creation of the Federal Reserve, it'll just make your head explode. Like it'll just make you look at the world in an entirely different way. So going back to the idea of one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin, there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. So I think, what is it, $400 trillion worth of assets on the globe, give or take. So we know that if all of that went into or was priced in Bitcoin, we know that the denominator is always going to be 21 million, and that's never going to change. With the dollar, with fiat currencies, we never know what the denominator is going to be because that monetary policy is always changing. So when people say that Bitcoin is volatile, it's actually the opposite. Bitcoin is not volatile at all because there's only ever going to be 21 million, right? It's the dollar that's volatile. And the price of Bitcoin, because we look at it in US dollars or whatever your nation state currency may be, it appears to be volatile because the fiat denominator is always changing. And that's a really, really powerful perspective mindset shift to take in as a Bitcoiner. I know Jeff Booth speaks about it a lot. And again, like I've said, I've been listening to these podcasts and reading these books for going on 5 years now, and it still is settling in to me, right? Like I finally figured out one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin, even though I've been hearing it for years. So it is a process, it is a journey. And just when you think you understand Bitcoin, something hits you in a different way, which is why podcasting is so powerful. Like the way that one person says something may not land, but then it comes out of somebody else's mouth and it's like the light bulb turns on, right? And you finally get it. So sometimes it seems like maybe there's too many Bitcoin podcasts, but I never expected our first podcast to be so popular. It's still boggles my mind. Like, I really don't know why. It's really cool, but maybe it's just people were able to relate to me in a different sort of a way. I don't know.
Yeah, there's so much there. And that's why I keep going as a podcaster. I know there's so many, but also George Bodine first debuted on my podcast and now he's really popular. And I also got one Bitcoin from Terrence. So big shout out to Terrence, Michael, and of course all of Bitcoin today. Hi everyone, I'm excited to share that I'll be a speaker at BTC Prague 2026, the biggest and most influential Bitcoin-only event in Europe, from the 11th to the 13th of June. Come and join me to hear incredible speakers like Michael Saylor, Jack Mallers, Fred Fenixon, and many more, and connect with a community of true Bitcoiners. Get your tickets now before prices go up, and use my link below for a discount. See you there. It is a constant learning for all of us, and you just get it when you get it. It's one of those things. Why do you think inflation is the number one issue that we need to educate people on?
I'll reference Peter McCormack because you brought up inflation. Again, I think I mentioned Pete on the first recording that you and I did together, but his podcast, really shaped and really gave me a lot of the knowledge that I have today. So I continue to listen to him, even though he's kind of evolved his show into the Peter McCormack show. But he's been doing these solo episodes with his son and commenting on the current situation in the UK. And it's been really, really interesting. I kind of love hearing what's going on in his head. Interviews are cool. But I also really like these kind of solo where he just gets to riff on what's going on in the country. So his primary focus at the moment is inflation. And it's like his single issue that he wants to tackle. So because of the growing wealth inequality that's happening in, I would say, all Western countries, if not all countries, period, there is a rising, socialist narrative, right? That this tax the rich idea. So I don't know a lot about the other guys in the UK. There's someone, Gary Economics, and I think Zach Polanski is who Peter references often, but they are, they're kind of these two younger guys who are repeating that tax the rich narrative. And if you don't know a lot about money, capitalism, taxes, socialism, history, me 5 years ago, I thought capitalism was the problem, right? So if you don't know a lot about those things, but you know that your life is becoming more and more unaffordable, you're gonna latch on to younger, people in your age demographic who are saying, hey, the problem is those rich guys, and if we just tax them, we'll have a better life. So what I've really appreciated from Peter's perspective is it's also helped me to look at inflation from a different angle. If we really want to tax the rich, the best thing to do would be to get rid of inflation because inflation is what makes wealthier people even more wealthy, because the lower class, the middle class, and even, the upper class, even though we may not fully understand that the dollar is losing value, everybody knows that you have to invest your money, right? People buy houses, they buy stocks, they're looking for ETFs, like they're looking for all these financial instruments, not just to make money, but just an attempt to hold on to the current value of their money, right? So the more that the lower, middle, and upper class take their dollars and invest it into these stocks, bonds, treasuries, what have you, that enriches the wealthy people even more. So inflation is the cause of the problem, and it's also perpetuating the problem. Like, it's a really vicious cycle. So
just explain, for example, if we put our money in the Bitcoin ETF, what you're saying is Larry Fink is the one who's going to benefit most.
yeah. I mean, all you're doing, the way I explain it to people, it's the same thing if if you have a Coinbase account and you buy Bitcoin and you keep your Bitcoin on the exchange, all you're really doing is giving your dollars to a company. That's it. And in exchange, you get a piece of paper, you get an IOU, but you don't actually, all you're doing is giving them your money. So you're trying to save your money. You're trying to, maintain the value or appreciate the value of your money, but you're giving it to the people that are causing the devaluation of your dollar in the first place. Like it's crazy. But
And in this case, you don't really have Bitcoin. You will get price appreciation, but you don't actually have the Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin is ever co-opted, I mean, we're getting off topic from Peter, because I
yeah,
also want to mention that when you do tax the rich, they just leave the country.
that's right. Yeah. I
They
don't
have the
have
means.
actual Yeah, I don't have actual numbers in my head, but I think it's like millions of millionaires or, entrepreneurs have left the UK because they're just being taxed. So who do you tax when all of the rich people leave? Right?
I mean, and look,
It's
even Canada, Jeff Booth is leaving Canada. He's public about that. The good people are leaving. Come on, countries, wake up. This is not the way to do it.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, it's just like everything else. I mean, all we can do is try to educate people, but at the end of the day, you have to go through it. You got to go through the pain to realize like, oh, that actually wasn't the right thing to do. So I think that's what the majority of Bitcoiners are really trying to do is to get people on the life raft before they are drowning.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the incredible thing about Bitcoin. I was about to ask you about ending the Fed, which I don't know if that's ever going to happen. You did tweet about that, but what do you think most people miss about central banking?
I think they don't even know that it exists.
Yeah.
I, I,
For s-
they
for
they
sure.
don't know.
It's not federal. They don't realize it's not federal, most people.
Yeah,
I
people don't know who Jerome Powell is. They don't know that he sets the monetary policy 8 times a year. They don't know that the US dollar is the world reserve currency. I often get people asking me like, "Why are you always talking about what's going on in America because I'm Canadian?" And it's like, "Well, the US dollar is the world reserve currency." It's not people are just too distracted to really take in the information that matters, unfortunately.
Yeah. Do you think privacy is also a concern? I mean, I saw that you also, and Keone Rodriguez went to prison. I just interviewed Lauren Rodriguez, and she's fighting for a presidential pardon. He was jailed for developing a non custodial samurai wallet. What are your thoughts on privacy, and does that concern you?
Well, it maybe doesn't concern me to the extent that it should, or to the extent that other people are concerned about it. And I think the reason for that is simply my life circumstances. I don't have children. I don't own a house. I'm fairly under the radar in terms of, well, I think I am. I'm sure I'm on a couple of lists. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that, but I guess my point is like I'm kind of a hard person to track down. So I don't really worry about privacy to a large extent, but I think, the whole thing is just rules for thee and not for me. I mean, the government and the banks, they are the most fraudulent, corrupted entity on the face of the planet, So for them to say, you're not allowed to do this thing that protects your privacy, but as the people, we aren't allowed to demand accountability from them for their actions. Like, it just goes to show you how corrupted and inverted the entire system is. So I do think for Trump to come out and say, I'm the Bitcoin president, and then under his presidency, a couple of guys go to prison for writing code. I mean, come on. That's insane. But what do we expect? What do we expect from our politicians, from our judiciary system? Like, I expect the most ridiculous results because they are the most ridiculous people. So I do think that it will be resolved, whether they do have to serve their full sentence, which I hope that they don't, but the truth will come out. And again, this is where persistence and patience, we need to persist. And I think the Bitcoin community is very, very good, just like Ross Ulbricht getting his pardon. We are very good at being persistent, and we are very good at patience. And perhaps I don't think the government really recognizes what they're up against when it comes to Bitcoiners, because we are not easily distracted. There is a new thing every single day to give your attention to take your focus, like, what is the next current thing? Is that the meme? Bitcoiners aren't like that. We will hone in on something that really matters, and we won't rest until it's resolved. So again, I think just persistence and patience. Yeah. But privacy is a right, and it's not something that should be granted or taken away by the government. But I mean, again, these are people that are literally stealing our time and energy. So what else do we expect from them? We have to expect the lowest level of service. Not expect it, but not be surprised when that happens.
Yeah, and I love that you said the truth will come out, because I said the same thing to Lauren. I could tell she's a little bit down on Bitcoin because this happened, and that's what we Bitcoiners want. We want truth, and that's what Bitcoin stands for in many cases. And unfortunately, no politician is going to beat the system because they get in there and it's too lucrative for them. Yes, they might do better things for Bitcoin and have better policy, one side versus the other. I mean, and talking of Simon Dixon, that's a whole nother level, right? Because he talks about that the people in government are just really puppets, right? Who's running the show is the money at the top.
I agree with that 100%. I mean, I just don't think there is any way that you can be of even moderate intelligence or have moderate skills of observation. Like, how can you look at any politician? Well, Thomas Massey might be the exception. I do like him, but I wouldn't trust him as far as I can throw him, but from what I've seen. But the point is, especially politicians in Canada, like, these are not the brightest people amongst us. It's so obvious that everything they do is scripted and that they're not actually thinking. They're not switched on. They are just repeating a narrative in order to prevent the public from revolting. That's essentially what's going on. And I think something really good is happening. Like, I think that more and more people, in big part due to the Nick Shirley, fraud exposure in Minnesota, like ending the year, starting the year, there was this whole, like, everyone on Twitter was asking, like, why are we paying taxes? Indeed, why are we? That's a great question, so it's a blessing and a curse that our politicians are puppets, because it's just getting so ridiculous that even people who aren't really paying attention are now starting to pay attention. So it's bad and it's good at the same time.
Hey there. Don't forget to like and subscribe to help me grow the channel. Want to sleep easy? MICROSEED lets you stamp your seed phrase onto a small steel washer. Buy the device once and use it forever. I love it. It's discreet, precise, and easy to transport. Get yours below. For peace of mind with collaborative custody, the Bitcoin Advisor is a trusted team who can also help with inheritance planning. Just scan the QR code or use the link below. And check out these super cool SATOSHOEs with over 40 styles to choose from. plus 10% off with my link below. Now, back to the show. You know, I have heard that a lot lately, that why are we paying taxes and people talking about not paying. I always wonder, how do you not pay? Maybe one way is just hodling Bitcoin and keeping your expenses down so that you don't pay so much. You know, and I've also heard that if we put a 10% tax across everybody, that would probably be a lot fairer, but then accountants wouldn't have any work.
Right. Yeah.
Just
It is interesting though. Like I think it would I like it. I mean, I got pretty fired up when I saw, people outside of the Bitcoin ecosystem, like whether you want to call them normies or, whatever. Um, when I saw people starting this movement, I was like, yes, yes, this is a good question to ask. Keep asking more questions. And if people would stop paying taxes, again, how do you actually do that? Like they can garnish your wages and taxes are just automatically withdrawn in most cases. But if people did stop paying taxes, that would force the government to print more money, which would accelerate the devaluation of the dollar, which would, I'm kind of an accelerationist. On one hand, I want things to go slowly so that people have a chance to escape before they're forced to. But on the other hand, I do like the accelerationist theory of like, okay, let's rip this Band-Aid off and get this over with. So if the government did have to print a lot of money to make up for people not paying taxes, we might see this hyperinflation and then hyper Bitcoinization future come more quickly. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this year if that actually is a thing or not.
And you spoke about volatility. When that does happen, obviously Bitcoin's going to continue to be volatile for a while. It hasn't been as volatile lately, but once we get to the elimination of maybe fiat currencies, then Bitcoin will be more stable. Is that your thought? And you're thinking even in 2026, some of this happening?
Paula, like I am so back and forth on a daily basis. You see a little piece of news and you think, oh my gosh, it's happening. Like this is going to happen this week or this year. And then other times, I think it's going to take generations. My mom is 72 and she often asks, like, will I be alive to see hyper Bitcoinization happen? And some days I think, yeah, you will. And then other days I think I won't be alive to see it happen. So I don't
Yeah.
know. It's a real toss up. I can see it going either way and I won't be surprised. No matter what happens, I won't
That's
be
a good
shocked.
attitude.
So yeah.
That's a great attitude. But I do think that the powers that be are going to fight this. And that's why I think it's going to take a lot longer than people think. Just like with the price predictions, I felt they were too high. My price prediction for last year, and I don't do that anymore. I don't focus on price, but I felt it wouldn't go higher than 139. And I kept trying to bring all the guys down. And the reason is if you look at just, the first time 10x or 100x, but then 10x, then 5x, then 2.5x. But, people are talking about the cycles breaking. And like you said, I think that's the best attitude. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, great. I'm a Bitcoiner. And if it's 100,000, I'm a Bitcoiner. And if it's a million, I'm a Bitcoiner.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I can see why, some guys coming from Wall Street or the macro sphere, they like that stuff. Like, there's a joke that it's astrology for men. And I do think there is a lot of truth to that too. But, and, it's interesting to talk about. It's interesting to think about from time to time. But exactly, like, there's no way I will ever not be a Bitcoiner. So ultimately, I don't I don't care if the price goes up or down. That's not to say that I wouldn't like it to go up, because there are certainly things in my life that I would like to do. Um, and I don't want to do those things until Bitcoin gets to a certain price level. But again, it's like you got to let go of a little bit of that control and that need for things to happen on your schedule and just trust that everything is going to happen in perfect timing.
Yeah. And are you mostly living on a Bitcoin standard? Do you pay in Bitcoin when you can, or are you living in both worlds?
I mean, I'm kind of in both. That's something I've been wrestling with for the last couple of years. Like, why do I have any money in the bank? It's ridiculous. Because I know it's just sitting there going down in value. So the majority of what I have is in Bitcoin. I do save a little bit of fiat, mostly I just don't want to have to sell my Bitcoin at this point. And I'm happy to spend my Bitcoin, but as you know, the medium of exchange adoption is a slow process. I mean, it's evolving, it is moving forward, and I do spend it where and when I can. But at this point, I feel like if I sell, I don't want it going to BlackRock. I don't want it going to these centralized. I don't want it going to Michael Saylor. I'll say it. I don't want him to have it. I think he has enough. I think he can stop. Um,
He's not
so
going to stop
that's
till he gets to a million.
I know and you know what? And he won't even stop then.
True.
Because why would he? I mean, if he can
Oh,
just
yeah,
continue to issue more stocks and raise more fiat, why would you stop at a million? I mean, there's no way that's gonna happen. So
absolutely. And
that's
we can just emulate him. We don't have to. I don't hate on him, but I also don't. I can also be more in self custody than in strategy. Although for those in retirement accounts, I get it, but self custody is king.
absolutely. Yeah, I think my Bitcoin word for 2025 was accelerate. And I think we got a lot of that. And I think that's going to continue in perpetuity, I think, as the whole system continues to just, nothing stops this train. And my word for 2026 is self custody. Going back to Simon Dixon, like I really think over the next 5 years, I think we're going to get into a whole stable coin situation before the dollar collapses and before Bitcoin becomes even more widely adopted. I think we have a whole stablecoin ecosystem to move through. Um, with the ETFs, BlackRock, all of these, what do you call them? What are these companies that are treasury companies that are holding Bitcoin? I think there are going to be massive implosions. Massive. Like, I think what we saw with Mount Gox, even though I wasn't around then, what we saw with FTX, I think those are going to pale in comparison to the size of the implosions that we're going to get. So, the only way to protect yourself from any of that is self custody. And again, that's a lesson that a lot of people are going to have to learn the hard way, but that's our job as Bitcoiners, is to get that message out, because at the end of the day, like if I could just orange pill everyone in my life and people that I interact with on a daily basis, Lord knows I would, right? If there was a button I could push, I would do it. But I can't. No one orange pilled me. I orange pilled myself. Someone offered me the suggestion, but I went down the rabbit hole. I chose that journey. And that's true for everyone. But no one that is in my life is going to be able to say, well, you never tried to tell me, or you didn't tell me about that, right? And I think that's a helpful mindset for a lot of Bitcoiners to adopt, because I know, I mean, gosh, I've been through 5 Christmases now with my family, and inevitably we end up having a late night conversation about money and real estate and Bitcoin, and they still don't get it. They're still buying Apple stocks and Microsoft stocks. They're still investing in government savings programs. Like, but they are not going to be able to say at the end of the day that I didn't try to educate them, or that I didn't try to tell them. And that's my compass as an educator in general, and as a friend and as a family member.
Yeah, I love that. I have the exact same feeling. I see my brother investing in real estate, and I haven't pushed it with him, but I got my niece zero point 0.1 Bitcoin, and now she wants to sell it because she wants to go work on a cruise and pay for the course with this money. And I've said, that very few people will ever have 0.1 Bitcoin. They say only about 10% of the population can get to that. Whatever it is, it's not a lot, but I, I can't say it anymore, but it is, at least I tried.
Yeah. So does she have custody of that Bitcoin? Like, are you?
So I have custody, and I have it in self-custody for her. I got it up to 0.1. But yeah, and I've tried to show her. They're like, no, you keep it. So I don't know. I'm not great with these kind of things, but boy, they know me as the Bitcoin person.
Yeah, well, hey, as long as you hold the keys, she won't be able to sell it and make a huge mistake. So,
True. So for
yeah,
now,
for now, yeah, yeah.
but
How old is she?
she's turning 21.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and a lot of that age group, I do talk to some of the Gen Zs, and I can tell she's a very pretty girl, and one of her main dreams is to just have a family, marry a rich guy, maybe. That's a great dream. I love families, but I still think you need your own Bitcoin.
Absolutely, yeah. Try to get her to go to a Bitcoin conference with you this year.
That's true. Speaking of Bitcoin conferences, you said you possibly are not going to anymore. Tell me why.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I think it's just my personal journey and evolution as a Bitcoiner, but I went to the Canadian Bitcoin conference in October. Um, and I went with my mom, and that part was great. Like, I love being able to go to things related to Bitcoin with my mom. It's really cool, and I feel really blessed to be able to do that. But um I just I guess I'm not interested in spending my money on listening to a lot of the same conversations over and over. And I think for me, like I said, I'm a Bitcoiner that's never going to change. So I don't really need to take in a whole lot more information about why Bitcoin is so important. I'm looking more at I'm financially sovereign, and because of that, I feel like I am sovereign from the entire fiat system. Like, I don't care. I mean, I care, but I don't care what the government does, what the next scary thing is that's happening in the news. I'm interested in becoming even more sovereign. So how can I grow my own food? How can I get land? How do I steward animals? How do I learn how to hunt? How do I learn these survival skills? So I think there's a whole um adjacent sovereign area around Bitcoin that we can explore as a group. Like, it's one thing to be financially sovereign, but there's a lot of areas in my life where I'm still not sovereign. Like, I still depend on grocery stores to get all my food. Um and I would like to be more prepared for a world that I think is going to get more and more dystopian moving forward. I don't think that this is all the things that are happening, I don't think it's going to just magically stop or start to reverse. I think it will get worse and worse. So, how can we as Bitcoiners prepare for that future? And I think we're so aligned. Like, have you heard of Joel Salatin? He owns Polyface Farms. He's called the lunatic farmer. He's like a whole regenerative. He's such a Bitcoiner. It's crazy. Like, that whole homesteading community, they are Bitcoiners. Like, they are just sovereign in a different sort of a way. So I think there's a real opportunity there for those communities to come together, and really create robust systems outside of the system. And I think that's really going to be key moving forward. So I would love to see more of those events, um, homesteading events, maybe with talks on Bitcoin, or even not. Like, who cares? Let's just get more sovereign together. And then if the topic of money comes up, we can go into the Bitcoin conversation. So if
I think
anybody is if anybody's listening and they know of any of those events, like I'd love to come. Like I would love to learn how to hunt and process animals and do all those kinds of things. So
Did you ever see any interviews with Freeborn Farmer? Because he does that and he's a Bitcoiner. And I know there are areas that do that. That's a great idea.
yeah,
But speaking
I
of,
think I follow him on X. Yeah.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's gone more to Nosta, I think. But, speaking of that, we did mention at the beginning that your interview has 34,000 views, the first one. And the response was mostly positive. Many people related to you around God, Bitcoin, and carnivore. What would you like to say to the Bitcoiners who connected with your story? And then I'm going to go to some of the other the negative comments too.
Okay. That's I you know what? I only read through the comments once and I was shocked at how many positive comments there. Like I'm kind of I don't really read the comments because I don't feel the need to get riled up about people having opinions who I don't even know. So good on you for doing that work
Well, I
for
just
me.
looked today, so I saw some more, and I saw you have lots of soulmates.
Ah,
and
so funny.
and I spoke to Boomer, who is the guy that listens to 60 hours of Bitcoin podcasts, and I said, Erin, I'm interviewing Erin. He's like, yes, because she's so pretty.
We
I
actually
said,
met
"You
briefly.
lots of pretty
Yeah,
girls.
we met briefly at the Canadian Bitcoin conference, but we didn't, I don't know, we just didn't have the time to really connect or whatever. So he actually did message me because he listened to our interview together. But what do I have to say? I don't know. I'm shocked, honestly, that the interview had as many views. Like I couldn't believe that it had more views than Jeff Booth. Um, I think it's just, I mean, I love people's stories. I'm a huge fan of documentaries, and I think humans are just super interesting, right? Because we're all the same, but everybody has a completely different life experience. So I think maybe, because I'm not a macro price chart watcher, I'm just a person. I'm just a regular person who found Bitcoin because I was experiencing difficulties in my life and it completely changed the way I see the world. So,
And you made a really bold move and sold your home for Bitcoin. And then also, you're very convicted in your views. That's why think people relate to you so much.
yeah. Yeah, thank you.
I think keep it
It's
up
always
and keep that
it's like
going.
I think like a lot of people, I kind of have that imposter syndrome. Like even when you messaged me and said, come back on, I thought, well, I don't really have anything new to talk about. Like, what do I have to say? What are we going to talk about? But so it did kind of put that into perspective for me. Like, oh, maybe I do have something to share and I should focus on sharing it more often. So that was also part of the motivation behind posting to Instagram every day. So
Oh, I love that.
let's hear the negative comments though. I'm
Yeah, let's
excited
go.
about that.
Yeah, I'm not a toxic maxi, so I don't focus on negative too much. But a few people said they disengage when you mention God. And
Yeah.
and this is not a podcast about what you think of a higher power or God. And Bitcoin, I just have to say, is for everybody. It's for everybody, not just Christians, not just carnivores, not just it's for everybody. So I don't get into that, but everybody's on their own journey. Oh, some didn't like the anti-mask. Because everyone's on their own journey, and some questioned you selling your house, and then others said, "How can you love animals and eat meat?"
Sure.
Yeah. You wanna respond, Danny?
None of that surprises me.
Yeah, I mean, we all have
um
some extreme things that w don't everyone doesn't get. Look at the world today, right? We are very polarized. But why can't we just live and let live? And you're just giving your opinion here, and that's what we do.
exactly. I mean, I really don't have a whole lot of response except for maybe the God thing. Like a few years ago I probably would have felt the same way. And I think people's relationship to God is kind of similar to their relationship with money. in the way that it's very emotional. Like, it's very triggering for a lot of people. And again, another shout out to a Bitcoin Today, Eric Rice, often quotes scripture, and that does turn a lot of people off, but he emphasizes that the church, like religion and God, are two separate things. This isn't about being dogmatic about a certain way of relating to God. This is just about God in general. And I put the label God on it now. I never used to. I used to call it the universe or source or whatever. Like, I don't know. It's cool. I just find that people that get triggered by it probably have some trauma as it relates to religion. Um, and that's okay. Like, people have trauma related to money, and that's why a lot of people can't have a conversation about money without having a visceral response to it. So that's fine, and like, I used to also not eat meat because I didn't agree with the treatment of animals in factory farms, and I still don't agree with that. However, if you are a vegan, animals are killed in the processing of plants as well, right? Sure, maybe they're not the big fluffy ones that can look you in the eye, they're little mice and squirrels and, things that aren't as anthropomorphized, if that's the right way to say that. But, you know, there is no life without death. Just like there is no light without dark. Like, you cannot exist on the planet without death being involved. And, again, here's my perspective as a death doula, but there's just no escape from that. So it's fine. I love animals. I have a deep and abiding respect for them. And I do my absolute best to only consume animals that are raised humanely and have the best possible life up until their very last day. But yeah.
Agreed. And we are top of the food chain. We have the most ability to change the world. And sometimes for some of us, eating meat is what's needed to be at our best. And I agree with you. As long as they're treated as well as possible, that's that's where we'll leave it. Because you also say you're a health maximalist. What do you mean by that?
My health is probably the most important thing to me next to Bitcoin. So, which, I think, again, time is our most precious and scarce asset and resource. So the best way to make the most of your time and to be around, hopefully, for the longest amount of time is to be as healthy as possible. So I'm just always very cognizant of what I'm doing in terms of my health. Like, I lift weights almost every day, not just because I want to look good, like, because it's actually, your muscle is a metabolic organ. And in particular for women, women at midlife, it really helps us deal with hormonal shifts and all of the physiological changes that are going on in our bodies at that time. So, I don't want to have to rely on pharmaceutical drugs. I don't want to have to, I don't, I don't have a doctor, and I don't ever want to have a doctor unless I get my arm chopped off, then I'll go to the doctor. But
Emergency room is necessary.
exactly. I believe in the body's innate intelligence and ability to heal, and I want to do my part to support that entire process as best as I possibly can. So I'm just very cognizant of my sleep, my water quality, my air quality, my food quality, all of that kind of stuff. It gets a little tricky because you can get a little rigid. So I do have to give myself some grace sometimes to just let some things go, which I've gotten better at. But for the most part, yeah, I think it's just part of who I am. So
Very similar to me. And yeah, I feel great when I live that way. I have to say, since I started doing the podcast, my focus I don't do as much as I used to, but it's part of me. So, yeah, I wanted to ask about death and Bitcoin and how do they connect for you?
Um, again,
Or for
I think it's, yeah, it's, what is that saying? Like, there's only two certainties in life, death and taxes. I don't think taxes do actually have to be a certainty or a truth, as we may soon find
apparently.
out. But I do think Bitcoin is true. So, but again, I think it's like both of those things put time into perspective. Like death really makes you aware of the fact that you do only have a limited amount of time. And the craziest part is that none of us have any idea what length of time we have. Even though I'm a health maximalist and I do everything possible to live as healthfully as possible, I could walk out onto the street today and get hit by a car. That could be it for me. So um and Bitcoin preserves our time by preserving our energy, by preserving the value of the time that we spend in order to obtain money. So it comes down to time, really. And what helps you to put the time that you have into perspective and to help you to prioritize what am I going to do with that time? And again, like I probably wouldn't be able to focus on my health as much as I can if it weren't for Bitcoin. If I was working 12 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week, there's no way in heck I'd be going to the gym 6 days a week and lifting weights. Like I know that just wouldn't happen. So like I made a post in the summer with my abs, like I have a six pack, whatever. That's not the point. But the joke was, I'm going to tell people I got this six pack because I save in Bitcoin. And it's kind of true. Again, like I wouldn't have the time. I'd be on the hamster wheel, I'd be caught up in the rat race of trying to maintain a house and pay for all of the things that I need to pay for. But because I've chosen a money that preserves its value and appreciates over time, I don't have to work as hard at work. So now I can work on other things that improve my quality of life. So
I love that. You have
if
to
you want a
send
six
me
pack, you just need to start saving in Bitcoin.
I love that. Send me a picture of you with your six pack, and we'll put that on the thumbnail.
Oh no. When I did that, I mean, I rarely post any pictures of my physique because it's just, it's kind of cringy. Like, I don't need the attention, but I did it just to see and there were so many people saying, like, oh, this is a thirst trap and you're just looking for validation. And, there was a lot of positive stuff as well, but there's
But you have
always going
a
to be
choice.
haters. So,
I mean, I've been in the fitness industry most of my life, and getting a six pack takes good diet, good discipline, good exercise. It's not easy, and you need time. So good
yeah,
on you. Good on you.
it's proof of work, right?
It is certainly proof of work, and especially for a woman, it is harder for a woman. Uh,
Especially for women. I always say to
Women have more
people,
muscle cells than us. It's just a
yeah,
fact. Women have to
yeah.
work harder to get that.
If I was a man and I had been lifting as long as I have been and for as frequently as I do, I would be like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I would be massive. And it's like, yeah, it's a whole other level of low time preference for women. But the again, it's patience, it's persistence, it's all of these qualities that are the exact same as being a Bitcoiner. So
I think I could talk to you a lot about health and a lot more about death, actually. I love the attitude. I just think in society we don't talk enough about it, and it is about living. Let's live our best so that we can die well, because at the moment we are gonna die. I know with AI coming, they say we can extend life, but until that time, let's live our best.
yeah, exactly. And on the whole AI thing, like, I don't know, I'm just not worried. I'm not
Yeah.
worried. I don't think it's going to take over. I don't think it's going to kill us. Like, I think Just like when I'm sure you saw on X, there was a meme of when electricity first came out. There was all these like propaganda posters that electricity would kill everybody, and it's the unknown. Like we're trying to make sense of the unknown, and there's just no way to know. I think it's just a next level search engine. I don't know. I could be totally wrong, but I just really don't buy into the whole fear and hype around AI. I'll probably get a lot of comments about that, but it's
Well, no, I've heard it's not good to have fear about it. I mean, even Jeff Booth says we need to embrace it and work with it and keep seeing the world we want to see, not
yeah,
the fearful world. So
exactly.
thank you, Erin. Tell us where people can find you and where they can follow you on Instagram.
Thanks, Paula. I'm at Death and Bitcoin on Instagram and on X if you're over there. So
Thank you.
thanks. We'll chat again soon. Maybe at the end of the year, we'll see how things have turned out.
Absolutely.
Take care.